Happening by Chance. My name is Mariana, and today I am here with the only one deck tag by Jay Cuneo at Iridescent Tarot. The purpose of this tag, as the name suggests, is what would you choose if you could only have one tarot deck and one oracle deck. I have seen many videos of this tag. I am currently obsessed with this tag. It's been fun seeing not only what people choose, but how and why they choose. So for my video, I'm going to take you through my thought process in arriving to the decision that I have made. I think that is what's one of the most interesting things about this tag. The reasons people choose certain decks, because you can see not only their tastes, but also it illustrates a bit about their practice, how they view tarot, how they use tarot. I feel like it says a lot about you as a tarot reader, how and why and what you choose. So I am going to take you through my thought process, and at the end, when I watched the original video by Jay, she was saying how your favorite tarot is a different question than what would you choose if you could only choose one deck. And I commented on her video that I agree with her and that I knew which deck I would choose for the only one deck tag, but that it wouldn't make it if I could only keep 5 tarot decks. So she said that was very interesting and that if I could explain that in my video. So at the end, I'm going to talk about why the deck I'm going to show you today wouldn't be in my list of only 5 tarot. So even though the favorite tarot deck is not the same as what deck you would choose forever and ever, even though that can be true, I do think that the first thing that comes to mind when you think what is the one deck that I would keep, the one tarot that I would keep, is precisely what is my favorite deck. I feel like that's the first thing that comes to mind. And in my case, my favorite tarot, if you have been following me for a while, you know this, is the Visconti Sforza tarot. Now, my favorite Visconti Sforza is the Pierpont Morgan deck. As you can see, it's very big, which I actually don't mind. I do readings with this deck and I love the big cards. However, my problem with this deck in terms of using the deck is not the size, but rather that the cardstock is very slippery. So it's a very dangerous deck to use for me, because I drop it a lot. Well, I feel like slippery cardstock is hard to use just in general, but when it comes to such a big deck, slippery cardstock makes it extra difficult. So that's why, even though this is my favorite version of my favorite deck, I wouldn't choose this one as my only one deck, because even though I do use it for reading sometimes, it's not the best in terms of functionality, which leads me to one of my criteria for choosing only one deck. And speaking about what this decision says about your practice, I do read to answer questions, whether for myself or for others, although I will admit that when I'm reading for myself, I don't usually have a question, I just pull cards. But when I read for others, I do read for answering questions. And you know that my favorite style is divinatory style, which doesn't mean that it's either deterministic or passive or just super quick and on the surface. I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about divination, but that's not the video for that. My point being that if I would only choose one deck, it would have to be a deck that was a good reader, straightforward reader, and that it would be a good reader both for myself and for others in the style that I read, obviously. Not only in terms of divination, but how I actually read the cards. That led me to, okay, what's my favorite deck in terms of reading for myself and reading for others, or what are my most used decks, the workhorse decks. I don't read professionally yet, but I would like to do that. So that's something that would need to be present in a deck that I had if it was only one tarot. So my favorite tarot when I read for myself is in this bag. I'm going to show you what it is in a second, and this would be my favorite in terms of reading for others. This is one of the decks that gets chosen the most. So this one, which is, as I said, the one that I have most used reading for others, is the Visconti Sforza, but it is the Mary Packard version. I'm not going to pull out the full deck. So this is the Visconti Sforza, the Mary Packard version. I think it's really not only beautiful, but very cool. It's really old. And so because of that, it's really magical. When I tell people this is a deck from the 15th century in Italy, they choose it. So people choose it a lot, and it's super functional. It's a great reader, and I have used it for large readings. I usually do a 9-card box, so a 3x3 or a 5-card line, depending on the question. But I do use this one for a large box spread. So as you can see, I do like big cards, and I don't mind them. And the same goes for my deck that I read the most with for myself, or the one that I favor. Of course, I have so many decks that I use a lot of them, but if I try to think what my number one is in terms of reading for myself, it would be this one. And this one is, I would say, okay, so the Visconti Sforza is my favorite, but I feel like the Milanese tarots have been taking over my heart, and sometimes I feel like I am being unfaithful to my dear Visconti Sforza because sometimes I think that, actually the Dottis, the De La Rocas, the Soprafinos, those are my favorite. I'm not going to go into that because I could be here for hours deciding, but this is the one that I use the most for myself. This is the Laura Tuan version of the Eduardo Dotti. As you can see, this is also large cards. There is just something about a large card that feels right in your hands, and I really love, my preferred format is this format of the Italians, the long format. So similar as the other one, I do use it in a line or in a box. However, and this is going to be my next step in choosing for this only one deck tag, while I do read this in large spreads, and while I do use this a lot, this or the Visconti Sforza Mary Packard, right? Like either of the two. While I do use them in large spreads, and while I do, I have traveled with this. Like I have traveled with this. With this one, not with this one. But I don't mind carrying the decks in my bag or in my suitcase, even though they're big and they're heavy. Even so, they are not the most practical for carrying around. Like, if, for instance, you're going to travel, but you're only taking a small bag, a small backpack, instead of a big suitcase, for instance, or like a small trip, you couldn't take this, right? You need to think about the space in your bag. Or if you want something more discreet, which goes for another aspect of how it would talk about my situation, my practice, etc. So I do live in a super conservative state or city or both. So I wouldn't feel comfortable just like going to a restaurant, and because I have been in restaurants with maybe my cousin, and it's like, oh, I do have a deck in my purse if you want a reading, but like I wouldn't feel comfortable just taking out like large cards and making it super evident that I'm doing a reading for my cousin, say. So in that case, I do favor mini decks, and also for carrying around in my purse, like, or my backpack. I use a backpack. I don't mind carrying this if, for instance, I'm going to a friend's house and I know that I'm reading her cards and she wants this deck. Like, I don't mind taking this in my backpack, but it wouldn't be an everyday carry. I guess that's the question. It wouldn't be an everyday carry. Just because, like, it's heavy. I'm not going to be carrying them around every day, all day in my purse if I don't know if I'm doing a reading. So I would want a deck that is an everyday carry. So let's remove this. So based on the fact that I want a deck, or obviously, like, I haven't said so out loud, but I feel like everyone could have guessed if you watch my channel, and if you have seen the ones that I've talked about, you can guess that obviously I'm going to pick a Historical Pips deck, but an Italian, because Italians are my favorites. It was just a matter of which, because those fit my criteria, right? So I like them aesthetically. I can read with them for any type of question. I can read with them if someone asks me, should I get back with my ex? Or I can read with them if I am asking, is there a hope for a better future for humanity in this horrible, horrible world? I could also ask it more introspective questions. I can ask like something about personal growth, shadow stuff, like whatever question I can ask those. So of course it was going to be one of those. And I feel like I went on a tangent and I lost my train of thought, so I'm going to show you what I picked. So the one I picked lives in this bag, which is not the bag it came with, and this bag is like, just from the bag I'm already feeling a connection to this deck. It's a very flimsy old bag of manta, which is this fabric, which I don't know how to call in English, and it has a stamp that is also not like the best quality stamp. It's kind of rubbed off of a Mesoamerican god. So like, just from the bag, I love it. But inside, it's not Mesoamerican. Oh my god, it started raining. I hope it's not going to be too loud. So inside, it's this deck, which is a version of the like ancient Italian tarot, which is, as I mentioned, part of my what's growing to be battling the #1 spot with the Visconti Sforza, this style of like Sopraffino, Della Rocca, Milanese, Dotti tarot decks. So this style of deck. This particular version is from an Etsy shop called Shaman Kai. Not the most expensive deck I own, but too expensive for what it is. So it's printed on basically printer paper. I'm not even joking. Like, it's not going to be the thinnest printer paper, but it's also not the thickest. I could do origami with this if I wanted. I'm not going to, because I don't want to damage it. I bought this when I was kind of new to buying historical tarot decks, and the listing said that it was handmade, and to this day, for the life of me, I can't figure out what creators mean when they say made by hand, because I see this a lot in the historical tarot community, and I thought what it meant was that they were painting or drawing the decks by hand. Of course, like painting it and then scanning it or whatever, but this isn't that. It's literally a digital printing. And I feel like even the expensive or well recognized historical deck makers, it's printed. They are not painting them by hand. I don't know if what she means is that she cut them by hand. They do look old, so maybe it has a treatment. Okay, this is hilarious because I'm talking about why I love this deck, and this would be my number one deck, and I've been just criticizing the deck. I feel like I do this all the time when I do body reads. I have a friend who I body read with. We've been body reading for years. We've read so many books together, and every time we do our comments, we're always like critiquing, and then it's like, I just want to make it clear I love this book. Like, so I just want to make it clear I love this deck, but I'm telling you all of this just because it is expensive, and if someone said, oh, it looks nice, I'm going to buy it, I just want you to know exactly what you are buying, right? So even though at first I was a bit disappointed, because it's printed in printer paper, it doesn't do this. Like, you can't glide, you can't flip through the deck, you can't. The reason why I can with this is because I soaked the deck. But I loved it because I love the size. It's small enough to do large spreads, but it's big enough that it feels good in your hand. So it would work for an everyday carry. And precisely because it's printed in printer paper, and it's small, and it looks old, it feels like I am truly like a reader from the past when I'm pulling from this deck. So because I loved it so much, but I never used it because you couldn't glide it, I soaked it, and now, as you can see, it fans. Like, it literally fans. I'm obsessed with this whole soaping thing. It takes me ages because it's not easy for me. So I have only soaked this deck, and I haven't even finished because I just soaked on one side, but I want to do both so that it looks laminated in both. And the soap that I used is kind of, I don't know, it kind of rubbed off in the best way because it makes it look even more vintage. I should have brought the soap, but it's like a sepia tone. So it gives it that tone, and it has a really lovely smell because it's an artisanal soap. So now it has this lovely smell. I already told you all the practical reasons why I chose this deck, right? It's functional, I like it aesthetically, I can answer any question, it's small enough but big enough, it, like, every functional aspect, it's good for shuffling now because I soaked it. Every functional aspect works. But from all the gushing that I've done, you can tell there's also a connection of me to this deck, but also a connection of me to the past. It feels like I'm traveling in time when I'm using this, not only because it's a historical deck, but because the way it's printed and the way it looks, because it's not the super best quality printing, because it's not the super best quality paper, because it's made to look old. All those reasons make it feel like I am connecting to the past and make it feel magical. I even love the backs because they are, this is the type of paper that is meant for book end papers. I think that's the name in English. So just love it. To finalize the magicness, the deck came with this small bottle filled with some form of orange crystal. I have no idea what it is, but it has the color of amber, which reminds me of my grandmother. And so this goes in the bag with the deck. I am not a big crystal person. I think you know this if you've watched my channel. But this particular color of amber reminds me of my grandmother. So this is the one tarot, and now let's move on to the one oracle. Oh, also, the reason why I thought this wouldn't make it in my top 5 is because the one that I would have in my top 5 is this one, and if I'm only keeping 5, I wouldn't want to repeat decks in like the same type of deck. So that's the tarot. Let's move on to the oracle. So what are my criteria for oracle? And I'm actually only going to show you one deck because I didn't have I mean, I do have a thought process, but I didn't need to show you more. It was so simple to pick. So what would I look for in an oracle? If I could only keep one oracle for the rest of my life, what criteria would factor into the equation? My number one criteria is that I would need an oracle that is good for reading in itself. I love reading with oracle. Love reading with oracle. Have loved it since the beginning, since I started learning tarot. And my favorite way of reading oracle is just oracle by itself. So another criteria is obviously in the same way with tarot, right? It's a deck that would be good for answering questions in a functionality sense. And also, of course, you have to like it aesthetically. It has to be beautiful, pleasing. At least for me, that's an important quality as well. So it has to have both. And the other aspect that is very important is that it's good for divinatory readings and for any other type of readings, same as tarot. My favorite French tarot tuber always says, when you have a deck that is meant for psychological readings, you can only use it for that. When you have a deck that is meant for fortune telling or divinatory readings, you can use it for anything. I heavily agree. That would be like one of my, if you want some quotes to describe my practice or my views, that would be one. I somewhat disagree in the sense that I am the type of person that I will grab anything and try to do divination with it. I like the challenge, so I do love the challenge of taking oracles that are not meant for divination and using them in a divinatory sense. When I see an oracle that I like, I see, will it be good for divination? If it will, then I buy it. If it won't, then I don't. So considering all that criteria, there's a quote that Taya said that I loved in one of her videos, and she was saying how she loves oracle because it's like a sweet treat at the end of a tarot reading that is the meat and potatoes. So like tarot is the meat and potatoes and oracle is the sweet treat. And I loved that quote because it made me understand my own views in a way that it put words to a feeling that I had that I didn't know how to explain in such few words. And it is that the oracles that I love are the oracles that are or can be the meat and potatoes. So all that criteria into consideration, and the final thought that made it so easy to pick is that I wouldn't be able to live without a fortune telling, more like cartomantic traditional deck. I am in love from a philosophical perspective, from an ideological perspective, from a political perspective, from a practical perspective with fortune telling. I'm not going to get into this video into why I love it so much from a political, ideological, philosophical sense, but I do, and maybe someday I'll talk about it. And so the obvious answer is that I would have to go with a Lenormand. It's the fortune telling deck. I mean, I also love Keeper, I also love Sibilla, I also love so many other systems. But the Lenormand is just such a classic and such an excellent reader, and just overall works for everything. So I have several. Which one did I pick? I went with the Bluebird Lenormand, and there are several reasons for that. I'm going to be quick with them. So this is how the Bluebird looks. I feel like this is my favorite from my collection, like, just period. When it arrived, it was such a surprise to me because it's such a cheap deck. It's such a seems like nothing special. I, for the longest time, didn't want to buy it because it has the quotes, and I thought I wouldn't like that. But on an aesthetic level, first of all, the images used, the paintings, the images speak to the romantic side of me. It's a very romantic deck, the aesthetic of it. So that speaks to that side of me, and I love it. And in terms of not aesthetic, but in terms of use, in terms of why this would be a great one for forever and ever. So when I read with Lenormand, I don't use the playing card inserts, which I know is like a sin in some circles, but that's just, I don't. But if I only had one deck for ever and ever, one oracle for ever and ever, this presents options, because you could use it without the inserts, you could use it with the inserts, you could read only the inserts, right? And it's like you're reading the cartomancy aspect, the cards, the playing cards, and having the phrases is just, it adds another element, because you could read with the phrases, without the phrases, only the images, only the playing cards, only these two, there are so many combinations that you could do with this deck. You would never get bored. Finally, and speaking of never getting bored, an important aspect for me is the learning aspect and the potential for learning. One of my favorite things about reading cards has been the learning aspect. I love learning the practical sense. I love learning the theory in terms of like the ideology, the philosophy, and I love learning the history. So if you had like a tarot and a Lenormand, you have so much to read and to learn for life. You could learn the history, the ideology, and the practice of tarot. You can read the history, the ideology, and the practice of Lenormand. There are so many versions, so many techniques, so many different approaches to both. Like, it would be never ending. You would have so much fun. Lenormand is also such a beautiful system because it's so linguistic. Like, you can't be a word lover and not love Lenormand. My teacher said one phrase about Lenormand and its linguistic aspect that I wish I could remember, because when I heard it, I was like, I'm going to love that system. So if I just had these two for life, I would be so happy. Like, when I talk about things like this, when I think about things like this, it makes me think like, oh, I should get rid of all my decks and just have these two for life, and it would make me so happy, and I could just explore. I could have so much fun. You could do like a tarot reading plus like a bibliomancy with a phrase. Like, there is so much that you could do with these two. Obviously, any type of reading for any person, for any question, for any situation, both Like both of these could fit in a small bag and carry it, both could be everyday carries. And there's just something so romantic to me about that notion of just like having a super curated collection, making a connection with just two decks. I follow an account on Instagram that is called Cuatro Mazos, which means four decks. And the reason why it's called that is because they only had four decks, and they had the most beautiful wooden box that they made themselves that exactly fit those four decks. They have four compartments for those four decks, and it's just so cool to me. Recently they added a fifth deck to their collection, the Matronoa Tarot, and it was just such a special moment of like deciding, a fifth deck to join the family. Just such a thoughtful, well thought out decision, so curated, and they made a new wooden box. And it's just, I know that notion is just so romantic to me. In theory, from that romantic perspective, I love the idea. In practice, I could never do it. I wish I was that type of person, but I'm not. I love having a lot of books and I love having a lot of decks. And even though I do love the idea of this romantic notion of falling in love with two decks, having a connection, and just making use of them, even so, yeah, I love my library, book library and oracular library too much. So that would be my tag. If I only had these two decks, I would be very happy. So that would be it. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun. Thank you for making the tag. It was such a great idea. And please do it if you haven't done it. And yeah, I look forward to your comments. Once again, my name is Mariana. This is Happening by Chance. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video. And in the meantime, I wish you happy reading, whether that be card reading, book reading, weather patterns, charms, pendulum, dice, whatever form of reading you prefer.